All right, good morning. This is Jeff Gorski from Leaders Building Leaders, and I want to talk with you today about John Maxwell's Law of Design, Chapter 7 from the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. Um, the Law of Design talks about building systems into your growth to ensure that you're growing, and then analyzing them to make sure you're doing so efficiently. And so John starts by talking a little bit about his favorite week of the year, which is the week between Christmas and New Year's, or the last week of the year. And at Maxwell training, I got to hear him tell a little story about this, about how he actually takes all of his notes from the previous year and he analyzes them. He thinks about every waking moment in his past year, and what he does is he tries to ask himself the question, did I utilize this time the best I could? It's a big time question to ask yourself based on that really makes you look in the mirror and think about the way that you're spending your time. But he believes that system was able to help him grow by doing that year after year after year. Every year was better than the previous year, and that's what growth is. So, in this chapter, John gives 6 different ideas to talk about your system, to think about your system, and think through your system. All right? So the first one of these ideas is, does your system consider the big picture? So does your system start with the end in mind? Now, I'm going to talk through these 6, thinking about one of my favorite systems I've developed in my life, and that was my commuting system between my home in Hoboken, New Jersey, that I rented, and the school where I worked, which was in Harlem in New York City, on the island of Manhattan. So there was a lot of different options, right? There's a lot of different ways I could have gotten from one spot to the next, and I had to think of how I would get from my house to school and from my school back to my house, because if I wasn't carefully considering, analyzing, and trying to improve it, it could take over an hour and a half, some days up to 2 hours to get from point A to point B, and that's a long time to commute, especially considering the fact that you do it twice a day during the busiest time of the day. So you have to think with the big picture. Am I thinking about the big picture, the end in mind, getting where I'm going? The goal is to get where I'm going as fast as I can, right? In that case. The next question he asked himself is does this system make us use our priorities? All right? Does it make us think about the best way to get exactly what we want? He talks about in the book his hatchet committee and how a lot of his ideas go in front of the hatchet committee and they take away 90% of the things, 90% of the options. So what are the options that I had going from point A to point B in New York City? I had a lot. From my house, there was the New Jersey light rail, which was a rail system that stayed in Jersey. There's the PATH train, which went from one side of the Hudson River to the other side of the Hudson River. There's the subway train, of course, that went all over New York City. There's also cabs. At this point now, there's Ubers and things like that. And of course, I could walk, right? Any of these segments, I could walk. On top of all that, I had to think about, which one of those ideas would get me there with the least amount of stress on me that I might be late. All right, so I'm developing my system. The third question he asks then is does my system include measurement? Right? How can I measure it? When you're developing a system, you make your goals based on if you can measure them or not, right? And I could measure because I was trying to get the least amount of time, right? Every day I could try and say, okay, if I took this combination, if I walked to the PATH to 33rd Street and switched over to the 1 train and got off my school, the door-to-door time was 1 hour and 37 minutes. That's not fast enough. Let me do it one more day and just make sure I can confirm that time and get it again. Right? I could always have a goal in mind. My goal was 1 hour and 15 minutes. That's what I wanted to get to. It's really hard. All right, fourth question then, or fourth consideration for your system is that effective systems include application. And what that means is, does your system have a mechanism for how to start? John talks in this chapter about thinking about, what are you going to do now? All right, what can you do right now? Does your system have a guideline for how to go from inaction to action? So you have to think about that. That's how you consider the application of it. What am I going to do now? So in my case, thinking about my system of getting from Hoboken, New Jersey, to Harlem in New York City every day and back, my application had some contingencies built into it. Like, for example, if I don't know if you've ever ridden the subway in New York City, but if I got off when I saw the express train across the platform, that transition time could save me. But I wouldn't want to get off and wait and just see when it came. So you have to know what to do now. What are my contingencies? How to apply my system based on a changing environment. All right. The fifth question, or the fifth consideration, would be to think about if my system is organized. All right. How is it organized? Is it on a schedule? Well, the subways are on a schedule. But do they stay on a schedule? That's another question, right? Does my subway stay on a schedule? Well, sometimes the subway car would get stuck underneath the Hudson River. The lights would flicker. It'd be very uncomfortable. Sometimes trains would get stuck on the track. Sometimes two would run one back to back right after each other, and then not another one for a long time. So that had to be also part of my system of design. And then finally, the sixth question is, do I have a system that promotes consistency? All right. Am I consistent? Do I keep testing it? Do I keep trying it? Do I find that it's the same on Monday and on Tuesday and on Wednesday and on Thursday and on Friday? And whenever John talks about consistency, it makes me think of one of my favorite Maxwell quotes, which is that leaders are built daily, not in a day. So you have to think about that consistency. Am I going to continue to apply this? And by continually applying this system, am I going to see it all the way through to its highest level of benefit? Right? So I tried every day for a month a different way of getting home. And I figured out that there's a couple different ways that were very consistently faster than the others. And those are the ones I settled on using. And of course, I threw a little wrench in it once in a while just for variety's sake. So when you go to the back of this chapter, applying the law of design to your life, John talks about these questions based around those 6 areas to ask yourself. He really condenses it down for you. Thinking about the big picture. Will the system help you reach your big picture goals? Your priorities. Is the system consistent with your values and commitments? Measurement. Does the system give you a tangible way to judge if you've succeeded? Application. Does the system have a built-in bias towards action? Organization. Does the system make better use of your time than what you're doing now? And consistency. Can and will you easily repeat this system on a regular basis? So when you apply this law to your life, think about building your systems in a lot of different areas. John recommends think about these 8 areas that are all worth the time for you to consider systems on. Your career, your faith, your family and your health, your hobbies, your marriage, your personal growth, and your vacations, right? So my quick reflection looking through those, I've been thinking this week about my personal growth, of course, being in the middle of this book and reading through this book. And I think that one of the disruptions to the system that I am feeling right now is that in the first half of this year, I spent a lot of time in the car. I was driving to schools that were far away and solo, and my system for growth was I was listening to a lot of podcasts, listening to books on tape, listening to phone calls that I could have the time for in the car. But you know what? In the second half of the year, I haven't been traveling quite as much. And so all that time I was dedicating to personal growth is no longer activated. So I've got to rethink my system. That's what I've discovered today in preparing for this call. So I hope this made you think a little bit more about the law of design, and I look forward to our next video together. Thanks for watching.